Hello. This video is going to show you how to properly manually format a document into MLA style for our class and for most classes at Holy Ghost using Microsoft Word. You can see at the top of the page here I have set the 9 items that you're going to need for a properly formatted document. Okay? We're going to go through each of these things one by one and show you how to do them properly. So the first thing we need to do is to make sure that we have 1-inch margins. That is, we need to make sure that the blank space around the edges of the screen, okay, or around the edges of the page, have 1 inch of blank space and no more and no less. Typically, when you create a new Microsoft Word document, usually the margins are already set up for 1-inch margins. And there's a couple of different ways to test to see whether that's the case. But one of the easiest ways is to take a look at the design, or I'm sorry, at the various tabs up here. This is where you're going to find most of your editing options that you need. Okay, if we go to Layout and you click on Margins, you'll be able to see that already we have 1-inch margins set around all sides of the page. This is something that we could change. So, for instance, if we wanted to change it to something else, we could choose 1/2-inch margins, right? And you would see that change reflected here. But instead, we want to make sure that we're using our normal margins. Okay, so 1-inch margins around everywhere. Okay, so that takes care of this element here. Okay. Next, you need to make sure that your document has page numbers. And the page numbers aren't just there by themselves, but they also have to include your last name. The space that you place them is supposed to be in the top right of the page. And what a lot of people mistakenly do is they try to manually create page numbers by just taking the very first line of the document, so something right here, right, where you can first click, and typing a number 1 and adding their name. So if it was me, for instance, I would have my name and the number 1. Okay, they have to be at the top right, so people will say, "Oh, well, I'll hit this button to put them over in the right." But the problem is this does not automatically then create a new set of page numbers down here. And then people will try to manually type those numbers again. But the problem is the minute that you change anything or add anything to the document, that new page number that you've created manually is not going to work. I'll show you, for instance, if I go here, click the button and say name and page 2, right? Now I've done that. If I type more in this paragraph, all of a sudden my page number is incorrect because I tried to do it manually. So we don't want to do that. We want to set these page numbers up properly. And the way to do that, okay, is there are multiple options, but one of the easiest ones is we're going to click up here to where it says Insert, and then we're going to take a look around for page numbers. Now, actually, page numbers not going to be in the Insert thing, so we have to take a look. We want, Insert should be where it is. Insert page number. Here we go. It was here all along. Insert page number. We want them at the top of the page, and we want them on the right-hand side. Okay, so we have a page number right here in the top right-hand side. That's our option. Okay, top page, right-hand side. There we go. So now we've got a number up here. And if I click out here and we move down, you'll see that automatically the page number has been correctly applied to the next page too. Okay. You want to make sure you choose the option where you have a number starting on the first page. Sometimes there's an option where you can have a blank first page and start number 1 down here. We don't want that. We want to make sure that we have number 1 on the first page. We also need to make sure that we have our name typed up there. So the easy way to do that is you just double click in the area where the page number is, and that opens up this area in the margins of the document called the header. Okay, and you just click and type your name. So last name will go here. Make sure you have a space between that and the first number. And then to get out of here, you can say close header, or you can just double click anywhere on the screen. Okay, so now I have last name 1, and then if I scroll down, it should say last name 2, and it'll fix that for every page. Okay, so there is our proper page number with the last name. The next thing we need is what the MLA calls the 4-line header. It's unfortunate that they call this the header, and then Microsoft Word and Google Docs calls this the header, but they have nothing to do with each other. The 4-line header is just going to include some pieces of information that you need to identify what is this paper, or sorry, who is this paper written by, what is it for, and when was it written. So the order that you're looking for is first name and last name, and then some combination of the following things. You're going to need the date, you're going to need the class that this paper is written for, and then you're going to need the teacher's name. Make sure you include the proper honorifics. So if it's Dr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so, make sure you have that there as well. There is an official prescribed order to these by the MLA organization. They want you to do it in a certain order. For our purposes for the class, as long as your first and last name are on the top here, I think that's fine, and you just need to include these with the other 3 in some order. I'm not going to get too bent out of shape about these. So first name and last name, your first name and last name, the date, the class, the teacher's name in any order, as long as they're all there. That's what you need. So that's our header. The next thing we want on a new line is the title. So this is the title. We want the title of your document. Usually it would be whatever the homework assignment is for. So if you were doing something for, chapter 1.1 section questions, the title could be chapter 1.1 section questions. This title needs to be centered and capitalized. It needs to be in the center of the page, which is very easy to accomplish. In Microsoft Word, you just click this thing up here that says center. You don't want to hit space bar or tab to do this. Just hit the center button. Okay. And this is the only thing on the page that should be centered. Everything else is left justified. We'll talk about that in a bit. The other thing is the title needs to be capitalized. You capitalize all of the important words in the title. Okay. Typically, that would be the nouns and verbs. So for instance, this is a title, should be capitalized. Is not typically capitalized, nor are words like am, is, are, was, were. Articles like the, and aren't capitalized usually. Prepositions, in, out, from, down, those things aren't capitalized. This can be a little bit tricky to know what should be capitalized and shouldn't, but stick with nouns and verbs. That's generally a good idea. Adjectives as well. So there you go. This is a title. And then on the next line, we're going to actually start our document, and we're going to have that begin properly. Okay, but so far we've taken care of these 4 elements. Okay. The next thing we need to make sure is that we're using consistent fonts throughout the entire document. Okay. You don't want to have one font in one spot and something bold and underlined in another place. Everything should be in one nice, simple, boring font. Okay. The default fonts that a paper will start with, so Calibri, for instance, are typically okay. Most people for academics, though, prefer Times New Roman and 12-point font. So the easy way to fix that is to highlight everything, either by clicking and dragging, or you can say Control A and say whatever it is that you want. So in this case, we're going to say Times New Roman. We're going to say 12. But you could choose whatever is acceptable to your teacher. Notice you want to make sure your colors are correct as well. Usually if you've been copying things off the internet, it can often lead to incorrect colors. So you notice that these things that I typed are a different color than the things that I copied from the Holy Ghost Prep website. This is a sort of grayish color. So again, we want to make sure everything's the same color. So we can choose this button up here and say black as our color. Now we've got proper colors down here. One thing that people forget is that you also have to change the headers font too. So you notice that all of this is now Times New Roman 12, but the thing that I had originally typed, this header, that in page number, is still in the original font, Calibri 11. So we're going to change that to Times New Roman 12 as well. Great. So now everything is consistent. And we don't want any underlining or bolding or fanciness with the title. That just stays plain old boring as is. Okay, so our font usage looks good. It's consistent across everything, and it's a good reasonable size and reasonable shapes. Now, we're going to go to double spacing. Every paragraph, or sorry, every line in this document should be evenly spaced out, double spaced, between each of the other lines. And we don't do that manually by hitting enter after every line, because if we were to do that and we type some more, now all of a sudden that's been ruined. Okay? The way that we do that is by, again, selecting everything, which you can either do by clicking and dragging or hitting Control A. We're going to choose our line spacing, which is usually up here, line and paragraph spacing. You can get to it by right-clicking and saying Format Paragraph, but this is the easy spot to click it. We're going to choose 2 for double spacing. You notice this really has spread everything out a lot, and that's okay. That's what we want. And there's also a reason why it also looks extra spread out. Do you notice that in addition to things being double spaced now here, okay, we also have this weird extra space in between the paragraphs, okay? We don't want that. That's what this element here is. No additional spacing between paragraphs. Your gut instinct might be to just delete this, right? To click here and say backspace. But then if you hit enter again to make this paragraph again, it will re-enter this extra blank space between these paragraphs, which we don't want. And the reason this happens is because in the default settings for Microsoft Word, it will automatically try to add a little bit of extra space after every paragraph. And we don't want that. So we want to say Control A to highlight everything that we've created so far. And then again, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to either hit right click and then go to paragraph, or we can say format paragraph, or we can click up here where it gives us paragraph options. And what you want to do is get rid of extra spacing. So we're going to go to spacing after. We don't want anything. So if we click here to get rid of this, don't add space between paragraphs of the same style. We can leave this whatever it is, but this is the most important part. Where it says spacing before and spacing after, this is the thing you want to change to 0. Once that's 0, you're going to notice everything's going to shrink together again. See, everything is kind of tightened up a little bit. And now if I go back to those paragraphs that we were looking at before, okay, there is no extra spacing in between these paragraphs. Everything is the same even amount of space, double space, in between each paragraph. Perfect. Okay. So far, we've gotten everything to here. All that's left is to fix our aligning and our indenting. The aligning is fairly straightforward. Everything in the document needs to be left justified or left aligned. And that means everything along the left-hand side of the screen is going to be nice and evenly flat. You can see all these words and letters are all lined up. And everything on this side of the screen is going to be jaggedy and uneven. Okay. And if you look, for instance, you can see that this is left justified. You could have right justified like this, where this is all flat and then this is jagged on this side. You can center everything, right, which we did for the title. Or you can use this option, which is called justified, I believe, where it's all lined up on the left-hand side and the right-hand side. I prefer this actually, but in reality, MLA doesn't want this. MLA wants left justified or left aligned. So everything should be flat on this side, evenly lined up, and then jaggedy unevens on the right-hand side. Notice though that in doing that, we've messed up our title. So we need to fix that and make that centered again. Okay. And finally, we need to indent our paragraphs. So we need to, at the start of every paragraph, add a little extra space to make it easy to tell where the paragraphs begin. And the way that we do that properly is by hitting the Tab key, which can be found on the left-hand side of your keyboard. Okay. So we're going to go through each paragraph and look for where we're going to hit our Tab key. So there. We need a new paragraph here. That looks good so far. Is there one more? There might be one more. Yeah, right here was another paragraph. There we go. Okay. So we've got our indented paragraphs. We've got our left aligned taken care of. So let's remove this checklist. See what this looks like. Notice we've got a big extra gap of space in here, so we want to make sure that this isn't there. Do we have proper spacing in between the title? This area is always where people will mess up the spacing, so make sure you always double check it before you submit something. And this looks pretty good. This looks like everything. Oh no, here we go. We were missing an indent. So now we've got an indent there. So this is everything is correct here. We've got our pagination, properly set up in the header of the document, last name plus the number, and it continues on to the next page automatically. Our 4-line header with the 4 pieces of information that we need, a centered title without any crazy font stuff going on and properly capitalized. We've got our paragraphs indented, left justified, no extra spacing in between paragraphs, and the whole document is double spaced so that everything is evenly lined up with each other. And that's it. So we have a perfectly formatted document in MLA format.